Everybody, my name is Councillor Russell Hurst. I'll be serving as chair tonight in Mayor Seely's absence. I will call the March 5th, 2025 public information meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. We'll now move to agenda item number 2, roll call. I'll call each council member to confirm their attendance by verbal consent, and then I'll move to township staff and our township consultants. So starting with Councillor Sapoulos. Present. Councillor Bailey.
Here.
Councillor Goida.
Present.
Myself, Councillor Hurst, and I would note the mayor had previously declared a conflict of interest with this particular item, so he won't be in attendance tonight. Staff, I'll just go from my right to my left. Sarah. I'll go first names. We'll keep it casual.
Present.
Sarah, Jesse. Present. Mehul. Present. Andrea.
Present.
Justine.
Present.
And Angie.
Present.
All right. Welcome, everybody. The next item, number 3, disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any disclosures of conflict of interest that any councillors choose to declare? Okay, thank you. So now we'll get into a bit of a preamble before we get into the formal part of our meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public with the opportunity to ask questions or to express views with respect to a development proposal. The councillors are here to observe and listen to your comments. However, they will not make any decisions this evening. The township requests that you please notify by email planning@buslinch.ca or by phone at 519-763-1226 extension 4 if you wish to be on record and would like to be notified of future hearings and decisions regarding this application. Please note the meeting is video and audio recorded, and all electronic meetings are uploaded to the municipality's YouTube page. By attending this meeting in person or by registering to participate in the meeting by electronic means, you are consenting to have your likeness and comments recorded and posted on YouTube. Please note, in accordance with amendments to the Planning Act through Bill 185, the following parties may appeal this application to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a hearing: the applicant, a specified person, a public body, the registered owner of the property to which the bylaw would apply, and the minister. Please note that if a specified person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Buslinch before the decision is made, the specified person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Buslinch to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, if a specified person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written comments to the Township of Buslinch before the decision is made, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. You may wish to talk to township staff regarding further information on the appeal process. There we go. The format of this public meeting is as follows. The applicant or agent will present the purpose and details of the application and any further relevant information. That's followed by the township's planner, who will then provide a brief presentation. Following this, the public can obtain clarification, ask questions, and express their views on the proposal. Members of the public are permitted up to 10 minutes each to ask questions and express their views. This time limit is imposed to provide each member of the public an opportunity to speak. Council will then have an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions. The applicant and the township's planning consultants will attempt to answer questions or respond to concerns this evening. If this is not possible, The applicant and or staff will follow up and obtain this information. Responses will be provided when this matter is brought forward and evaluated by council at a later date. There we go. That was a lot to get through. Now the good stuff. Item number 5 is the actual report. So this public meeting involves an application by WDD Main Street Incorporated. Zoning bylaw application D14-WDD-WDD Main Street Inc. Part Lot 31, Concession 8, Township of Puslinch, County of Wellington. The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to amend the Township of Puslinch new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018 to rezone the lands from urban residential, future development 2, and natural environment zone to urban residential site-specific special provision zone and natural environment zone within an environmental protection overlay. I'd now like to call with the owner and applicant, please approach the table to make a presentation. And believe we will have visuals provided shortly. For those who are up, if you can introduce yourself and then the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, council, members of the public. My name is Kaylee Robbins. I'm an associate at Weston Consulting, and I'm here representing the owner WDD Main Street Incorporated. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to receive feedback from council as well as the public and take that back and evaluate the comments and move forward with a recommendation when the time is appropriate.
Just 1 second. Would you like to move closer to here, sir?
I can sit right with her.
Or even in the front row behind the gallery beside John?
Watch out. There.
Yeah, also, I wonder if we could just, it might be easier if you face the gallery to some degree too, because I think everybody's.
Sure, maybe on this
Yeah,
side, so I don't move my
sorry.
back to you two. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
All right, we'll try to make it as interactive as possible.
Sorry, I'm very sorry to have my
Okay.
back to you.
Sorry for that delay. Sir, hopefully that accommodates you a bit better. So, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So the purpose of the meeting is to describe the zoning bylaw amendment application and the associated proposed development. So on screen, you'll see a timeline of the application. So over the last few years, we have been working with township staff, conservation authority, and the township peer reviewers to evaluate the technical merits of the application. So we've worked through numerous comments with township staff and peer reviewers. And in January of this year, the council deemed the application complete, which means we've provided the technical requirements for the application. Last month, we went to a planning and development committee meeting in which we presented the application to the committee. They were in general support of the application and provided comments for council to consider in their evaluation of the application. And then today we're at the statutory public meeting in which we are looking to receive feedback from the public on the zoning amendment application. We'll take that back and then we'll evaluate those comments and determine which revisions, if any, are needed to the plan. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the subject property. It is located in the southeast quadrant of Morriston. It has an approximate area of 23 hectares with frontage on both Back Street and frontage on Main Street, and it is currently vacant with naturalized lands. Next slide, please. And just a bit of site context in the greater Morriston community. So you have residential abutting the site to the north, mixed uses at the intersection there at Badenoch and Highway 6, but I have a feeling most people are quite familiar with the context, so perhaps next slide, please. So this is the proposed development. So you'll see with the yellow, those are the proposed lots. So we are proposing 21 lots, which will accommodate single detached dwellings. The lots range in size from 0.19 hectares to 0.36 hectares. Predominantly, they're about half an acre, so 0.2 hectares. We are proposing a new public street in accordance with township standards. So that's a 20-meter right-of-way. We're also proposing a stormwater management block to provide for stormwater quantity and quality control. And then you'll see kind of the greatest portion of the site is still environmental protection lands. So we've provided and are protecting those environmental protection areas with appropriate buffers to the features, which I'll explain later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So based on some comments we received at the planning committee, we wanted to provide images of kind of the design inspiration for the future dwellings. The actual design of the dwellings will be much later in the process, but these are kind of the renderings that are being contemplated at this point. So they will be 1 to 2 story dwellings. Size will be about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. And again, that's just approximate. And I understand there was perhaps a comment or two about lighting. So any exterior lighting would be in accordance with the zoning bylaw, and the owner would be looking to achieve dark sky compliant lighting. Next slide, thank you. Also stemming from the planning meeting, there was a desire to see the potential landscaping. So this is just a conceptual image of the township standards for the right-of-way. So you have about an 8-meter asphalt two-way drive aisle, and then sod on either side, and then a sidewalk based on township comments if a sidewalk is desired in this area. But this would be based on township comments and what they're hoping to achieve. Thank you. So in the County of Wellington official plan, the lands are designated residential, core greenlands, and greenlands. The core greenlands designation represents the wetland on the site, generally speaking, and then the greenlands designation also generally represents other features such as the woodlands. The yellow in the image represents the residential designation, which does permit a variety of housing types, but does have policies to protect kind of the low density character of the community, which we have taken into consideration with the proposed development being a low density development. Next slide, please. This is the current township zoning bylaw. So there's a small portion of the site designated, or sorry, zoned urban residential. A large majority of it is zoned future development in contemplation of future development on this site. It also has a environmental protection overlay and a natural environmental zone, which again is generally representative of the wetland area. Next slide, thank you. This is the proposed zoning bylaw. So we are proposing to rezone the residential portion of the development urban residential with a special provision to reduce that minimum lot area, which the requirement is 0.4 hectares or about an acre. And we're seeking to reduce that to just under half an acre, the 0.19 hectares. We're also looking to establish a special provision for the stormwater management block to ensure that block is only used for stormwater management. We're also looking to permit home-based businesses in these future dwellings. So that would be, for example, a private home daycare or in that realm. Home-based businesses are permitted on any residential lot in the township. So we are looking just to maintain those provisions. And then we are rezoning a large portion of the property natural environment with that environmental protection overlay to ensure the long-term protection of those core features on the site. Because we are seeking a reduction in the lot area, we wanted to take a look at Morriston and what the existing lot fabric is. And this image might be hard to read, but the blue is essentially all of the lots that are half an acre or less. So our proposed development is quite consistent with what you do see in the community. there are many lots that are around that size on private services, and we're looking to kind of maintain consistency with those existing lots.
Can you make the slides full screen?
I can zoom in a little bit, but you just might, some of the features, is that more helpful?
Sorry.
Better?
Better?
All right, go ahead.
Sure, next slide, please.
So I'm just gonna keep going back and forth.
So this slide here is just a list of some of the technical reports that the project team has prepared and submitted to the township, which have been reviewed by township staff, conservation authority, and the township peer reviewers. And I'm just going to dive into some of these. I think some of these are quite important in consideration of the proposed development. Next slide, please. So the first is the environmental impact study, which was done, and we do have the ecologist on the call. So if there are any questions, he's obviously able and capable to answer those. But generally speaking, the green on the slide here is the significant woodland, and then the blue is the wetland. And then within the woodland and wetland area, predominantly the woodland area, there are species at risk that have been identified, special concern species, and endangered species. The environmental impact study does evaluate and identify what species are on the site, and also provides an assessment of the potential impact of the development on those features. We are providing at a minimum a 10-meter buffer to the woodland and species, and then at a minimum a 15-meter buffer to the wetland. So based on that and the location of the proposed development, the environmental impact study does conclude that the development does not have a negative impact on the ecological features or their functions, and they will be protected for the long term, especially with that rezoning portion of the application. Next slide, please. So we have also completed a hydrogeological assessment as part of this application. So 5 boreholes were installed on the site with 3 monitoring wells and 3 test wells. So these instruments tested the groundwater quality and quantity. I'm not a hydrogeologist, so I'm providing kind of their findings in their report. But they did find that the groundwater quality does meet the health-related drinking water standards, and the groundwater quantity is capable of meeting the residential peak demand for the future development. And I understand there were comments from the township peer reviewer hydrogeologist, and we have addressed those comments related to groundwater quantity and quality. Next slide, please. We also have a civil engineer as part of the project team who prepared a functional servicing and stormwater management report. In their report, they detail that these lots will be serviced with private wells and private septic systems. And the private septic systems will either be advanced or standard treatment systems. The functional servicing report also details the stormwater management facilities, which is planned to be a dry pond and will outlet to the Bronte Creek tributary. Next slide, please. We've also prepared, we have a traffic engineer as part of the project team, and they prepared a traffic impact study, which assessed nearby intersections and the road network and the traffic generated from the proposed development. So at the beginning of formulating the proposed development, we had considered an access from Main Street. Originally, we had wanted to provide a continuous road network through the development from Back Street to Main Street to have 2 points of access. Unfortunately, access from Main Street is not a viable option due to disturbance to the wetland. Main Street itself is not the appropriate width, and the location of Main Street did not meet the MTO minimum spacing requirements. So with that, the access is from Back Street. And with that, the traffic consultant identified a need to assess the sight lines turning from Back Street onto Badenoch Street. So the traffic engineer assessed turning left onto Badenoch Street from Back Street. And if those sight lines were available to them, being in a vehicle, they assessed a passenger vehicle as well as a snowplow. And there is sufficient sightline available that meets the requirement. In the slide there, it mentions the requirement is 125 meters, and there is 136 meters available for sightline. Conditional on a relocation of the existing retaining wall on Back Street. This retaining wall is on county property, so we would work with the county to have that relocated. And as part of the application, the project engineer did provide for a drawing showing that minor adjustment in the location of that retaining wall, moving that slightly to the south. We understand the condition of Back Street is not per town standards. So as part of the engineering package as well, they did show improvements and upgrades to Back Street to be in accordance with township standards. It's my understanding the road is the width it is needed to be. It only just needs to be reconstructed in accordance with township standards. The traffic impact study also assessed the traffic generated from the development and found it to be negligible on the impact to the community. These study intersections will also be operating at satisfactory levels when looking at a 5 and 10-year horizon, and there is sufficient parking spaces provided for each dwelling. We are anticipating 2 at the minimum. We anticipate there will be more parking spaces for each dwelling provided. Next slide, please. So in summary, the zoning bylaw amendment application is to permit residential development of 21 new detached dwelling lots on a municipal street. We are proposing the conservation and protection of significant natural heritage features and functions. We have assessed groundwater quality and quantity. The traffic assessment reviewed both sightlines, traffic, as well as access. So it is our opinion the proposed development is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the County of Wellington official plan, and does provide for housing opportunities in the community while protecting the environment and providing upgrades to the existing road network. Thank you, and I'm available for questions from everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Maybe one, just from the comment from the gallery around the visuals, I do realize that this is like an eye chart for some of you at the back. I would note on the township website for today's meeting, all of the documents that are presented and very detailed maps are on there. So after today's discussion, if you do want to look at a plethora of different site maps, they are available to you if you weren't aware. So I just wanted to make note of that. So thank you. So I appreciate the time, and we'll go to the next one and then open it up a little bit later for Q&A from the public. So with that, I'd like to have Jesse Ospitz, the township's planning consultant, present his report.
Good evening. Oh, okay. Oh. So, oh. Okay. So good evening. My colleague has answered many of the questions, and with respect to the application for zoning bylaw amendment. I'm gonna try to skim through some of the matters that have already been raised. So as noted, the application pertains to zoning bylaw amendment. Sorry, next slide. For approximately 23 hectares of land located northeast of Highway 6 in Morriston. The subject lands are accessed via Main Street, which is located southeast of the site, and Oak Street located northeast of the Main Street entrance and connects to Badenoch Street east. So this slide provides an agenda for the. So this slide outlines the development process with respect to the proposal. The first submission with respect to the application was received by the township in March 2023. 5 subsequent submissions were received since the original application was submitted. Notice of completed application and public meeting was issued January 31st, 2025, and that was based on council making the decision to deem the application complete at its January 22nd, 2025 meeting. The minutes of council indicate that council directs staff to schedule an additional public meeting for this application in order to give the public an additional opportunity to provide input on the application. This hasn't not been occurred yet, so the applicant is working to address comments through the review process. A recommendation report will also be presented to council at a future date. So the application proposes to rezone the subject lands from urban residential to future development to natural environment zones to urban residential site-specific zones and a natural environment zone with an environmental protection overlay. So the nature of the development has already been indicated by my colleague. Concurrent application is being considered by the County of Wellington presently for a draft plan of subdivision with respect to the subject lands. So this slide, it shows the location of the subject lands, which has already been discussed. I just want to outline some of that there are the subject lands include non-provincially significant and unvalidated wetlands, significant woodlands, regulated and non-regulated water course, including tributaries of Ronki Creek. And the regulated water course also include floodplain. Surrounding land use consists primarily of residential and commercial uses. So directly northwest of the subject lands along Back Street and Badenoch Street are residential parcels of varying size. It was pointed out that many of those parcels are actually smaller than what is being proposed with this application. Located west of the subject lands along Queen Street is the Morriston Central Business District, which includes various commercial uses, including cafes and restaurants. And the subject lands also abut Old Morriston Baseball Diamond to the north and open space and agricultural uses to the east. Next slide. So I just want to go over the policy context with respect to the subject lands. So I think this identifies the policies applicable policies, but I just want to point out that the County of Wellington official plan designates the lands as a secondary urban center, and the objectives encourage growth in primary and secondary urban centers. And they also support the achievement of complete communities in primary and secondary urban centers and hamlets. The lands are zoned urban residential zone, future development zone, and natural environment with environmental protection overlay. The residential zone applies to approximately 1.1 hectares of land to the south of the old Morriston Baseball Diamond. The FD2 zone, the future development 2 zone, it applies to lands not impacted to the natural heritage features so the urban residential zone provides for and regulates all forms of housing. It does permit single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplex and townhouse dwellings. The FD2 zone, which applies to a large portion of the undeveloped lands, provides for and regulates the orderly development of the unbuilt residential areas of the urban centers of Aberfoyle and Morriston. The NE zone provides for and regulates flood-prone areas, hazardous lands, and natural heritage features within the township. The EP zone and indicates that physical features are present and may warrant further review or permission prior to development approvals. Slide. So this is basically this is the extent of the Wellington OP designations, as well as the zones and overlays that apply to the subject lands. See. Next slide, please. So this slide basically identifies what the requested zoning bylaw amendment is specifically. So the portion in yellow would be, it's proposed to permit single attached dwellings, home businesses, and private home daycare. And it also proposes to reduce the minimum lot area from 0.4 hectares to 0.9 hectares. I'd like to point out that additional residential units were applied for originally, but they, based on comments that we've received through the township's consultants, that request has been removed. Next slide, please. So another, the urban residential site specific zone also would permit the stormwater management facilities, as well as reduced the minimum lot area from 0.4 hectares to 0.3 hectares. And the NE zone would permit conservation uses. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Sorry. Oh, one before. Thanks. So the applicant has submitted an application for draft plan of subdivision for the subject land. I'd like to note that this application is presently being reviewed by the county. Notice of complete application was provided with respect to the draft plan of subdivision in December 13th, 2024. Next slide, please. So with respect to circulation, I'd like to note that technical comments regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application have primarily been resolved. There is an ongoing matter that's being discussed with respect to home businesses and how to address that to make sure that there is no impacts there's no negative impacts to groundwater, and that's an ongoing discussion. And on next slide, please. And next slide, please. So we are continuing to review the application, and we'll have a recommendation report for a future council meeting. And this will be once all planning matters have been resolved, we're satisfied that all matters have been resolved.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate you walking through that. And again, similar to my previous comments, Jesse's presentation is available on the township website for reference. So now we'll move into the in-person public opportunity to share particular comments and ask any questions. So are there any persons in the gallery who have questions, require further clarification or information that wish to present their views on the proposal? If yes, just raise your hand and we'll try to have you come down and sit in the chair here and share your comments, ask the questions either of the planning consultant, Jesse, or our suite of township consultants that are here to provide guidance. When you do so, I just ask that you please state your name and the address for the record, and then come forward. So please, if there is anybody, the floor is yours. Yeah, sir. Please come down.
Hi, my name is Hans Jurgensen. My wife Kathy. I live at 40 Badnock Street. Would you prefer I said?
Sure.
Okay. I live
If
at
you're
40
comfortable.
Badnock Street, so I'm right in the thick of it regarding the street that is Back Street. I'm not gonna mix words here. I don't like it. And it's not just because you're gonna screw up my entire house I built 20 years ago. That's besides the point. We do need housing. So I'm not against the proposal of building houses. My issues with Back Street. I'd like you to drive down Back Street and turn left like you mentioned it would work. It won't. Okay, I'm not saying this lightheartedly. You cannot turn left on Back Street in the winter. You can barely do it in the summer. With the new cars nowadays, you can't step on the gas and the tires spin. Okay, there's a limited clutch on the back end. And if you stick your nose out, even without the wall being there, and a car comes over the hill towards the east, it's dangerous. We've had accidents there. And that's with me and Mike living there and our friends. There's going to be people hurt. There could be people killed there. People come over that crest and yes, they are speeding. That's not your problem, but they are. And turning left out of there has gotten so questionable that we have to turn around and go down Back Street and leave on Queen Street because we can't turn left. And if everybody turns out and turns left on Queen Street, now you've got a really short distance between there and the lights on Highway 6. So this access point to this property is not good. It's just the crest. You said it was 124 meters minimum and it has 136. I didn't measure it. Maybe you're right, maybe you're not. That's not the problem. The problem is it's not safe to do it. I've had to have my car in reverse and go and make sure there's no car there. And then slam into reverse if there is. And I have to make sure Mike isn't behind me. Because it's all very tight. And even if you move the wall, it doesn't take into account the crest of the hill. So really the crest of the hill has to be removed. And I'm just gonna sit down here and say it's dangerous. I'd like to really know if the access to Highway 6 isn't a wiser move in the potential future. If the bypass is put in anyways, your lands already have access to Highway 6. And I know it's a long shot, but if you want to incorporate, you know, the calming measures that you guys want to do with the Highway 6 going through Morriston, why doesn't the traffic from this community that's going to be built, which I think is a fine idea, access a less dangerous intersection? And if this is going to happen and you have this hill and you've got this dangerous intersection, is the liability on Paslich? Now it's Township Road. That's my concern. Okay, I just think that that's a dangerous place to have 23 houses going in and out of there. And let's face it, most of them are gonna turn left. If they turn left, they go to the lights, and they go to 401, and they go to Hamilton, or they go to Guelph. I mean, 90% of the time I'm leaving there, I'm turning left. And it's a dangerous point and it has to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Is there any points of clarity that you would like to make? Don't feel obligated, but
Sure, yeah, can I stay here? or-
yeah.
I'll stay there.
I think that's very fair. I have went and turned left a few times now from that intersection. It is something that we've looked at very closely as part of this application and really kind of the major constraint to the development. We don't want to hold up the development of 23 houses because of this one item. So we have worked closely with the township traffic consultant. Their concerns seem to have been addressed with our traffic report that does assess it and does propose the new retaining wall. And we are looking at making those upgrades. So not only is it safer for the proposed development, but also safer for the existing residents. It doesn't fix the crest in the hill, unfortunately, but it does the shifting of the retaining wall and providing back street to town standards. Hopefully does provide an increased level of safety for future and existing community members. I will take these comments back though to see if there's another way to evaluate or if there's something that the crest was considered in part of the evaluation by our traffic consultant as well as the townships, but yeah, we can take it back to see if there's any other kind of analysis perspectives too.
Thank you. Is the access to directly to Highway 6 completely off the table? And if so, why?
We don't have lands as part of this application on Highway 6.
Doesn't your little notch go right to Highway 6?
Those are the part of the application that forms basically it's all wetland. So we didn't explore that option based on the features that are present.
Okay, thanks.
Any from the township consultants, is there any points of clarity that you were looking for based on the dialogue from the delegate?
No, no, I don't have anything to add.
Thanks. Other members of the public, sir? Yeah, please state your name and your address and.
Yep. My name is Mike DeYoung. My wife Lucy is here with me. Address is 7501 Wellington Road 36. So our property is going to be also directly impacted. I have a few questions. Has this application considered where the mailboxes are going to be?
Sorry, I'll provide an answer. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Through the draft plan of subdivision application, we'd received comments from Canada Post. I don't believe we've received comments from Canada Post thus far. I would assume it would be a community mailbox within the development.
Okay, because typically Canada Post doesn't want to go much further than existing mailboxes. And there are existing mailboxes on Main Street. If this development contributes to more mailboxes on Main Street, there will be people coming with their cars out of Back Street, and Back Street on the back side, impossible for two cars. Another question, and I see that from the drawings that you did, Main Street was not considered. You state in the traffic report that Back Street is not capable of handling the traffic without reconfiguring and some construction. Main Street is actually wider than Back Street. So Main Street could handle the traffic. And I would propose that the applicant consider Main Street as an entrance.
Sure, if that has been considered or if it hasn't, if you have any
It was
knowledge,
part of
sure.
the kind of the original plan that we were trying to move forward with. MTO would not permit an access that close to the intersection based on spacing requirements and the wetland. The road would have to go entirely through through the wetland to Main Street. And I believe that the asphalt itself of Main Street may be larger than Back Street, but it depends on the boulevard width. The boulevard width of Back Street is 20 meters. I believe the boulevard width of Main Street is 12 meters.
You said, the MTO will not allow access from two points. It's MTO's policy, it's not the law. So MTO can change their mind. And it all depends on council and the township to determine what is the best entrance. And I'm saying Main Street is the best entrance. And I also agree with Hans Jurgensen, because we exit out of Back Street. And the sight line is dangerous. I'm saying that there will be accidents. And the township allows access to this property or to this development without considering Main Street. I'm saying that the township is going to be maybe liable for a wrongful death. Question for you. You stated in your, in the proposal that the houses were going to be from 2,000 to 3,100 square feet. Is there going to be a maximum allowance of square feet? Or is that just an estimate of what these houses are going to be?
That's currently the estimate. We aren't seeking any changes to the zoning maximum lot coverage.
So if a member from the public wanted to put a down payment on a property and on a house, 4,000 square feet, are you saying that the builder would probably do that?
It would be based on meeting the zoning provisions.
Okay.
We're not seeking any changes, only to.
Right, so
area.
if council would allow that, and if the building permit was given to a house of 4,000 square feet. 4,000 square feet house can house 2 or 3 families. That would be like 6 cars per driveway. Well, I'm saying that if council or the township allows these things, I'm saying that there would be many more cars trying to exit through Back Street than what we typically think. If I look at all the cars that are in the driveways of the houses that are across from Regional Road 36, I see 4 to 6 cars in every driveway. So if you have 23 houses, that means over 100 cars coming out every day to go to work. And then every day, 100 coming in from work. And then that also does not tell you how many cars go in and out during the day. That many cars at that intersection is going to be dangerous. And I strongly suggest that the applicant look at Main Street. I know number 6 is probably not going to be a viable thing because number 6 is too busy at the moment. And who knows when the bypass is going to go in. Been talked about for 30 years. But Main Street.
Thank you, sir. Jesse?
Could I, like, just provide, one item that came with respect to the traffic impact study. I just one point of clarification, I note, I don't know if this will helps a little bit or provide some response to the comments. But I note that the traffic impact study that was submitted and that was accepted provides that there is 20 new two-way traffic trips that would occur during the weekday AM peak hour. Okay, 5 inbound and 15 outbound trips, okay? And then there's also 25 new two-way trips that would occur during the weekday PM peak hour, which would consist of 16 inbound and 9 outbound trips. So I'm not giving an opinion, but I just wanted to give that, so there's that information that's come forward from the applicant.
I saw those people doing the count and doing the traffic report. They were standing right at the end of Back Street and and it doesn't take an allowance for a person sitting in his car to look 8 feet ahead and try to peer around corner. The traffic report, does it take into account the speeds?
Yes, it considered not only the posted speed, but the average speed of vehicles traveling, and it used the average speed of vehicles traveling,
The average speed of what,
60 kilometers.
60 kilometers? I live on that street. 60 kilometers is not the average.
I think that's, I appreciate the comments. I think that's good feedback to come back for further analysis. So thank you, sir. I think there's a ma'am at the back. Please come forward. Same process. Please state your name and
I'm
address.
Emily McKenna and I live on Main Street. So different vantage point here. Should I sit?
If you wish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know the intersection has been, I think, the topic of everyone's concern. I walk that intersection multiple times a week with my stroller and my 2 dogs. And I will say my concern isn't as much the traffic of turning left, but having a school bus trying to get onto Ox Street with no sidewalks and now these additional cars. And I'm assuming majority of people coming in, hopefully, will be some young families in there with the additional children. So for my point, it's adding the construction vehicles with the school bus now not being able to walk because there are no sidewalks with the increased traffic. I just wanted to raise that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not sure if there's any comments on the questions at all. But I appreciate it, and I think it.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question then. So are you suggesting sidewalks would be more helpful?
I think sidewalks, and I think the main, not like my main concern when thinking about it is the width of the road.
On
I don't think
Back Street?
on Back and Walk. Right now, when I'm walking with my stroller and dogs, if there is an oncoming car, I have to go into a driveway and I have to park, especially if it's a school bus, especially if it's a snowplow. And a lot of times there's no possibility of having both ways. So with the increased traffic, it won't work.
Thank you. Other individuals in the gallery care to share any comments? Yeah, sir, go ahead. Whoever would like to step up first. Ladies first. Thank you.
My name is Kathy McNabb. I live at 40 Badenoch Street in Morristown. I just have more questions, I guess, and comments concerning this traffic management study. I'm curious as to what exactly that means, how long you actually studied that area, and what you were studying when you say the MTO spacing requirement. I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm curious if you're thinking that Back Street is actually going to become two-way traffic, because that's, as was just pointed out, impossible. And what the changes are that you're considering for Back Street based on the study that you've done.
Sure, I'll try to start kind of from the beginning there. I'll preface this by saying I'm not the traffic engineer, so I will hopefully answer your questions, but I don't think I can answer them fully, so I can get you that information directly from the traffic engineer or put you in contact. So they come out to site, they assess the traffic that's currently happening. Then they also assess the 5 to 10 year horizon, which includes the proposed development and a 2% average increase per year. So that's where they provide their opinion on the traffic impact, not just currently, but in 5 and then 10 years. With regards to the MTO spacing requirements, if the access were to be from Main Street, the traffic would come onto Badenoch and then turn right or left onto Main Street. That the intersection of Main Street and Badenoch is too close to the Highway 6 and Badenoch intersection. So it's bringing too much traffic close to a higher volume traffic intersection of Highway 6 and Badenoch. And when I'm speaking about the improvements to the road network that would be included with this proposal, it's, I guess technically it's Ox Street. So traffic would come from Badenoch Street onto Ox Street directly into the proposed development. I think the labeling is the Ox Street and Back Street. The proposed upgrades are to Ox Street. The boulevard width is 20 meters there. So the road can become 8-meter asphalt with sodding or sidewalks or whichever kind of the township desires, because their standards, it would become their road. And then that road would travel into the proposed development. And the intent is that traffic would just travel on that upgraded Ox Street into the development. And that would become a two-way street and be upgraded based on township standards.
So the assumption is that people will never go down Main and along Back Street and sneak into the subdivision that way. They'll all just go down what you're calling Ox Street.
That is the assumption, especially considering that segment of Back Street obviously being quite small. That if we provide those upgrades to Ox Street, it provides just a bit more spacing that I think is much desired.
That sounds like a great theory, but I don't think that that's actually how it would work, seeing the way that the subdivisions or that the community works now. If you have that number of cars coming out, they're gonna go around the other side. They're going to be lining up on 36 to go into, to turn left there anyway. It doesn't sound like it's been practically studied. I'm wondering how long the MTO person was there looking at the traffic, and was it just one afternoon? Was it during rush hour? Those are the sort of things, they really have an accurate picture of how that little area works, because adding 21 more homes worth of cars with home businesses and school buses and everything else, it sounds, I'd really like to know if they did a very thorough study or just a Sunday afternoon kind of a glance.
Yeah, so MTO assesses kind of the impact to Highway 6, obviously being their jurisdiction. The township consultant, township staff evaluate the traffic on the general, like the entire area. I will say that the traffic engineer on the project team was very thorough in his analysis and worked very closely with the township consultant, and they're in agreement of the outcome of that study and the recommendations regarding the upgrades.
So the concern is that it's too close to the high traffic 6, and the MTO is allowed to say that that's not acceptable then, that you have to have this spacing?
Yeah, so each jurisdiction kind of has their own, obviously, policies and requirements that have to be followed. Like any policy, there are changes that can be made. So for example, township requirements would require us to rebuild the retaining wall and relocate that to allow that intersection to be safer. So it's really just kind of about balancing all these different jurisdictions that we have in simplification.
I don't wanna, I would like to reiterate though that if there is that ability to make these changes and adjustments, if the adjustment of coming in off of Highway 6, you say you don't have the land, but it looks like from the pictures that it does abut there and that it's a bit of a wetland issue. Is that not something that could be put back on the table with all of those calming measures that are coming in with the potential? Maybe it can't be done as quickly as the developer would like, but for the long-term, maintenance of the community, I think both Main Street and Back Street are bad choices. And I think coming off of Highway 6 and finding a way to maybe creatively use that solution, get the MTO involved, get the developer and the MTO talking, and not create all of these problems for the township, and make it a bigger community, better community all around, rather than it working for the new part and really compromising what's already there. This would be my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sir.
I'm James Doors or James Doors at 7595 Wellington Road 36, directly next to Mike Young. So I guess when we're talking about the traffic, could I hear those numbers again that they used for the amount of traffic going in and out in the AMs and PMs?
Sure, let me just follow up that page. So, through the chair, 20 new two-way trips during the weekday AM. Peak hour, and that consists of 5 inbound and 15 outbound trips. 25 new two-way trips during the weekday PM and peak hour, and that consists of 16 inbound and 9 outbound trips.
That doesn't make sense to me. You have 21 houses there. And businesses, and that sounds like they're assuming only one person in the house leaves the house a day. Those numbers, roughly, yeah, that's not enough.
Sorry, can I mention a point of clarity? So this is 20 new two-way trips during the AM peak hour, right? So there might be, I mean, not everyone goes and leaves their house between 7 AM and 8 AM, right? Like, I don't know what the peak hour is, right? People leave their house during different times of the day.
Yeah, you said AM, so I'm assuming that's till noon.
AM peak hour, so what?
Peak hours.
Okay, so not from like, not with, yeah.
Yeah, not, so not, you're not cutting a day and a half, you're doing peak hours, okay, understood.
Yeah.
Still is pretty, I think that's not conservative, it's pretty underestimated, I think, for that. Okay, I just want to hear the numbers, and I think they should look at that again, because I don't think those numbers are high enough. There'll be more traffic, especially businesses, and if we get into larger houses that has multiple families living in the same home with 6 or 8 cars, those numbers are gonna drive right up. And the traffic, you don't have to be a genius, everyone's gonna they're gonna come up Ox Street between Mike and Hans, sorry. Between Mike and Hans, and there's multiple cars sitting in front of them, they're gonna make a left and go down Back Street and come out Main Street. It's gonna happen. So the traffic's gonna increase on Back Street, between Ox and Main is still gonna increase, so. There should be looking at 2 exits and 2 exits for emergency response too. There's one way in that's blocked. Is that good for emergency response? Has that been considered? There's a fire or fire ambulance, any emergency, has that been looked at?
It was, we ran it through the Preston Fire Department and they were okay with it. guess given the
Ambulance?
number of residents. They do. We didn't talk to ambulance, I don't believe. We could do.
And one thing I don't understand is you mentioned in you had sorry, was it conservation or environmental overlay? What does that mean? I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, so the township zoning bylaw provides for kind of a natural environmental zone, which is the key feature. And then the environmental protection overlay is in addition to that, and it may not cover the same land, but it provides for that extra layer of, should something change on site, there are features on this property that would need to be assessed, essentially. So it's just that extra layer of protection and evaluation should the lands be rezoned.
Okay, all right. Those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other, yeah, I'm done, please.
It's Mike, 7519 Wellington Road 36, Van Heat. Yeah. Just want to add to the point, the street that's going, like, I guess, an Ox, I guess, that's going to Back Street there. If you've ever crested 36 going eastbound, you cannot see anything over that crest until the very last minute. It's become more evident when they had the snow piled up on the side there and they were doing snow clearing. You have to wait basically till everyone's clear, and then you can kind of like move up towards the crest to see if anyone's kind of coming westbound, right? So if there's anybody that's walking their dogs or whatever, you know what I mean, and someone has to wait to make the right turn to go into that street, there's gonna be, if there's no way to see if there's people, they crest that and they stomp on the gas, you know what I mean? And it's been like a number one, like they're always speeding, right? So my concern is that if somebody's now stopping their vehicle on the road because there's no room, even if you guys move the retaining wall in front of your house, there's still not gonna be room for a right-hand turn lane. And if anyone's stopped on that road because of something else is not allowing them to make a right to go into that street, it's gonna be a lot of accidents. Because you cannot see anything there. So it's like, even if there's an Amazon driver or whatever that's parked there, you can't see anything, so. People aren't gonna use that street to go in and out, it's too dangerous. Turning right on this, off of that street onto Wellington Road 36 is dangerous enough, you have to basically hit the gas and pray. My next question was, the road that goes into there is gonna basically, it heads south and then it goes east. That grading there is kind of like a motocross track. I'm assuming it's not gonna stay that way. So what is the proposal, like what level is that road gonna stay at? And what's it gonna look like for the houses that back onto that road? Will it be a big retaining wall with a street way up high, or will it be, you know, like, it has to be at it can't be a 20-degree, you know, incline and up and down, you know what I mean? So what's it gonna be?
Good question. I'm not a civil engineer, so I didn't prepare the grading plans, but I know there's no retaining wall proposed. Basically, I think you're speaking about where the road takes goes east.
Yeah.
And then there's that house there.
There's one house at the end,
Yeah,
yeah, but for that
So there's,
section, it's
yeah,
pretty
there's
steep hill.
a part of there's a small block kind of between that lot line and the proposed road.
Okay.
To allow the grading to allow no impact to that grading. So I believe, I don't know what the grade will be. I don't want to.
I have a grading.
Okay. I don't want to put this on.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like it's not showing all the way up to Bay Knot, but this is 6%.
6%?
Yeah. And then we've got some 3-to-1. Yeah. But there's no retaining walls.
Is this map available as part of
So
the?
this is part of Crozier and is part of the civil engineering set. So this is.
Is that
Site-
available on the website? That, no?
Not sure. I noticed it, but I could have been an oversight on my part, so I think it would be If it isn't, I think that would be a value just based on,
6% is still a pretty steep grade.
It is a steep for a road, yeah, it is.
Especially for, the winter time, right?
So is that the road or the grade off the road?
The grade of
It's
the.
the grade of the road, yeah.
Grade off the road.
Yeah.
My next question would be the grade off the road towards, the north side of the road.
So you got an 8.5, and a 3.3.
Is that sloping towards the road or is it sloping towards the north or the south? Sorry.
Problem.
You know, sloping, if it's gonna slope towards the,
I don't know, I'd have to work.
yeah.
So, I wish I could memorize all of it.
Looks like it's sloping towards the street. But, okay, but I think, yeah, 6% for the street grade. Should be probably something to consider like changing, because it's, my driveway 6% and it's a nightmare. When there's any, even a thin layer of snow on it.
Yeah, again, I'll take that back, yeah.
It's like slip and slide, and you don't wanna hit the, the guy's house in the bottom.
Yep.
My next question would be, how many streetlights will be a part of this street? And what style will they be to maintain, I guess, the night sky?
Yeah, so components like that would be confirmed through the detailed design process, which typically occurs, say you get zoning and then draft plan approval. Through draft plan approval, you get a full list of conditions that have to be met. And with something like this, the construction of the retaining wall would be a condition, upgrading Ox Street would be a condition. And then the detailed design would be a condition as well, which shows the landscaping of the public road and the lighting. All of the lighting would be based on township standards. So any public street, I'm sure the township has kind of a standard that they have and maintain. So that would be applied to the street as well. I don't know that this spacing for township standards, but we would follow what is required for a public street.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody online that that has any questions at all? I'm struggling to see that part, to be honest. Oh, sorry, I missed that. Please approach. I'm sure you've understood the routine by now.
Yeah,
Name and address.
7501 Wellington Road 36. Something that just occurred to me as we we're doing all these discussions was the increase in traffic that we always have when there's an accident on the 401. And yeah, so how is that going to affect this subdivision as well? Because we have, every time there's somebody, for the accident on the 401, we see increased traffic coming down Wellington Road 36. And that happens a lot. It's not just once a week. It could be 5 times a week or more, sometimes twice a day. But anyway, that's another one of my concerns. I just thought maybe number 6 would be a better entrance point because of that. I also have a little selfish concern is that a lot of people are coming in and backing into our driveway when they realize, oh, where is this going? We have a nice circular driveway and, oh, we're getting company. No, we're not. It's somebody just coming around and going back out again. But anyway, that's also, something that's concerning to me. Another thing is, I noticed when they were doing the traffic survey or whatever, they put a post on our property and that only lasted overnight. And I don't know if that was the length of their survey or what, but I thought, what is this post doing there? And I phoned them because it was on our property and they said, oh, we're just doing a survey.
or the traffic, it'll be down, and within hours it was down, so I don't think that was a very long, lengthy traffic survey, but anyway, so that was, yeah. That's a lot.
Well, thank you. Let's try to go online if we can. Let me shepherd this, Justine.
Sure, so if there are any attendees who would like to speak, if you can please use the raise hand feature, it's just at the bottom of your screen.
We'll give those online a few moments here, just sometimes technology that never moves as fast as you want. Is there any other individuals in the gallery that have comments?
I have one question on the traffic report. You said so many cars at peak hour. Does the traffic report suggest how many cars total in one day?
I don't recall that if it did. I apologize. I don't
No,
think so.
the standards for this type of study only require it to assess AM peak hour, assuming that's in the morning when you see most vehicles coming in and out, and then PM peak hour being the most time you'd see a vehicle come in and out. So those two values combined, I guess would be not the most in a day, because you could also have people coming in and out there, but that's the highest volume of traffic anticipated during AM peak hour and PM peak hour.
I would like to suggest that another traffic study be done. And the estimate of the total number of cars during one day based upon square footage of the houses.
Thank you, sir. I think certainly as this is a public meeting, that recommendation is certainly heard on behalf of my colleagues at this table. So thank you for that. Sir.
Well, as you can tell, we're all beating the same horse here. The issue here is traffic, and Mike has suggested this, and I believe you mentioned your forecasts are for 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years is gonna be over in a flash. I mean, by the time the houses get built, it'll be 10 years from now. And the traffic is gonna increase way more than you think it is. And what's gonna happen then, when you realize you've created a bottleneck, now you have to build another road. So I would recommend you look forward 20, 25 years and see what the traffic flow is gonna be like then. And the inevitable conclusion will be that this access point is a bottleneck. And I think that really needs to be. And I'm not just saying this because I live there. It's a single point. It's too small and it's got a bad sight line. And when the accidents start happening, somebody's gonna point fingers to somebody.
Thank you. Sir.
Just to add to that point again, if we somehow get over the hurdle of this wetland problem where they're coming off of Highway 6 or whatever, if we can get like I don't know, a bridge or something like that over the wetlands, then we can have an access to Highway 6. It'll also help the province push for the bypass, because then it would be a significant reduction in the traffic to Morriston. So pushing to get an access to Highway 6 could serve a way bigger purpose and be a lot safer in the long run. Getting the bypass built and getting, people in and out, in my opinion.
Thank you. Before we move to questions from council, any last questions before we wrap it up? I don't believe there's been anybody online that's indicated either in the comments or raised their hand that they'd like to ask a question. Okay, so we'll now move to members of council asking any clarification questions regarding this application. So I'll start with Councillor Sapoulos.
I only have two questions. We went through this at the Planning Development Advisory Committee.
First question is, was there any consideration for signal lights at Badenoch and Elks?
I think I would like to turn that to the applicant, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'll take that back. They do assess the intersections and assess if any improvements could be made. That recommendation was not included. So based on that, I would assume that they assess that potential and that it's not needed at that intersection, but I can take that back to check.
And the second question relates to ARUs. So I was always understanding, reading all the reports that the ARUs are gonna go ahead. I don't see why they were eliminated, because you can put an ARU on top of a garage, you can put it in the basement. Any comments on that?
That's so through the chair, the reason why.
Jess, maybe just for those individuals that maybe aren't familiar with what an ARU is, can you maybe just state that?
Yes, so an ARU is an additional residential unit. The concern with respect to ARUs from a planning perspective is the density of the site. So these are, so we wanted to make sure that there was no negative impacts to groundwater. As you're increasing the density of the site, the septic systems become more and more they have to be constructed to a higher and higher standard. And we didn't have sufficient information that ARUs can be accommodated on the site.
Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we have a lot of traffic concerns and questions. Is there an opportunity, or how do we get the opportunity to actually ask the traffic consultant direct questions or request a redo of a study? Can you talk me through how that process would work?
So through the chair, the way that these typically get done is, I think a lot of times when pushed in the township, the recommendation report goes immediately after the public meeting. In this case, that might not be the most appropriate approach. When you're dealing with a more complicated application like we're dealing with the zoning bylaw amendment, but there's a concurrent draft plan of subdivision. Typically what happens is you bounce it back to the applicant to provide a response, and then that could be reviewed by the traffic consultant.
Okay, I guess I have a question, and here's where I want to ask a question, but I don't feel like we have the right people in the room to answer it. But it looks to me on one of these images that there's a Gordon Street. So I'm wondering if that's a road allowance off of Highway 6. Yes, it would have to go through wetland, but I'm wondering if that was ever considered, and if not, why? And pursuing an option like that. So maybe if you can take that back, or this is where I'm not clear on how the process works. I like the idea of doing another traffic study with some of these concerns.
When you say Gordon Street, do you mean Queen Street, which is really number 6?
Nope, it's perpendicular to 6. It looks like it would go from 6 right into the wetland, and it's called Gordon Street on this image that I'm looking at. So I guess I'm looking for clarification on that.
The church?
Nope, it's south of Church.
Ma'am in the corner, I feel like you have an answer for us.
I'm gonna answer because I live right next to it. My name's Kathy Haskell. I live at 67 Queen Street, which is Highway 6. It is an unopened road allowance. It's wetland on one side of me and I'm on the other, and it goes right across tributary of Bronte Creek, and it's all wetland.
Okay. Thank you for that. You did have the answer. So
I
appreciate
lived there for 40 years. Yeah.
And then my second question, I think, Kaylee, you mentioned, dark sky compliance. This township doesn't have a dark sky bylaw yet. Staff doesn't know that I'd like to add that to the list at some point. What standard though, so if we don't have a dark sky bylaw, what standard do you set it to, or at what point can we request the standard be, more robust than what is standard?
This is more of a detailed design kind of
Yeah.
building permit.
But it's an important,
For sure, so yeah, I guess Doug's gonna comply, I'm not sure if people are familiar, it's basically reducing light pollution on adjacent properties and keeping light pollution to your property. There is a certification process, I believe, for certain fixtures, so that's something that we would look into. I don't know, it's not typically a zoning bylaw item that you would include in that sense, but it is something that probably be a condition if you're wanting to kind of secure that. For the exterior lights of the houses, it'd probably be through a condition or through building permit review. I haven't seen it through a zoning bylaw, but.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Goida.
Thank you. I have two questions. So I'm looking at on the agenda, there's the map that you had on the screen there. And in behind all of the lots is the natural environment portion. And I'm just wondering, I mean, presumably each of the individual lots is going to be sold to its individual owner. What happens in terms of the ownership to the rest of the land?
Yeah, that's a good question, and
I would like, if that's all right, that's ongoing discussions, that hasn't been landed on yet. We're still addressing that internally. There may be a separate report going to council to deal with that matter. Some of the considerations though, I mean, that block 23, the only access would be through the stormwater management pond block. So we have to see if it's appropriate to provide access to block 23 for maintenance. But in terms of what's going to happen to it, who's going to own it, that hasn't been determined yet.
So question on that, and I'm not sure what the options are being considered, but I'm not sure what you're permitted to put in the environmental protection zone, but could that become a park or a trail or something that would service not only this new part of the community, but existing portions of the community as well? And how would that transpire?
That's something that we would have to look into a little bit more exactly how that can be used, whether it can be used as a park, to what intensity. The reason is because it does have significant, I mean, like it does have wetland, it does have hazard features. And is it appropriate to necessarily be drawing people to that site? That's a constraint that has to be looked into.
Or could it be that one of the lots becomes a really great big lot with only a small building envelope on it?
And that is another potential.
Okay, but just one key thing that I would want to know is if we're landlocking that entire piece of land, or if somehow we can have access there for at least future use or whatever. And then my second question is in regards to the traffic. I know our traffic consultant isn't here, but I'm wondering if prior to it coming back to council, if the traffic consultant could look at investigating if there are any measures that could be put in place to discourage or prevent traffic for the new development from traveling along the narrow portion of what would be Back Street. I don't know if there's anything out there, but just looking at maybe there's something innovative that would deter traffic from traveling along the Back Street portion that is not suitable for two-way traffic.
Anything else, Councilor Gordon? Thank you. I think I did have a couple questions. I think to most of them, they've been addressed. I think the first one was just when I saw the layout, I was concerned around emergency service access. That seemed peculiar, that it's a one in, one out. When I just, where my head goes is building code type of thing. And like, if this was a building, it would be a tough sell. I really feel like a review of an updated traffic study, I think certainly heard loud and clear here. The 10 to 15 meter buffer, maybe a question of the plan, or maybe this isn't established yet. What would that buffer entail? Is this a managed grass strip? Is this a planting of trees in association with the larger protected land? I'm just curious what that looks like.
Generally, the buffer would remain in its natural state, with no additional plantings. You would just kind of keep it as is and let it continue to be natural. We are working with the Conservation Authority to see if they're wanting some enhancements in some locations to even improve the natural state, but generally it is just to remain as it is today, basically. And it does just provide that separation between development being dwellings and sheds, whichever may be, and the actual feature itself.
Okay, thank you. And just my last question was around water management, and I think one of the questions came up from the public around the sloping, and I think that, you know, when I had a look at that facility, it's quite hilly, and it was around just, you know, today's a prime example of this. We've had a lot of snow, we've had several inches of rain, and you know, that's a very sloped area. I'm just envisioning like a wet mess type of thing, and flooded basements and the whole 9 yards, and becomes an erosion issue. Has any consideration been given to how one would manage water in this potentially new subdivision?
Yeah, so we do have a stormwater management pond proposed, and I may pass it to Andrea, but the stormwater management pond does provide for quantity and quality control, and it does propose to discharge into or outlet into the Prodigy Creek and to that naturalized area there. So we are taking drainage kind of from the built-up area towards the natural lands, and that's all.
Yeah, that's right, and I have the drawings right here, like Crozier did the drawings. They've advanced the design fairly well, like we sort of pushed them to go a little bit further and ensure that it was feasible. There will be some details that are ironed out during detailed design, but yeah, they're meeting the township criteria for stormwater management as well as the conservation authorities. They reviewed it. Like what they have in place is, you know, it meets standards and guidelines of best management practices and that we would expect to see.
Fair enough. I'm envisioning the cadence of water this time of year would be just a total mess. And I'd encourage, and I think another comment came in, what's this look like 20 years from now type of thing, given that there is environmentally protected area to the south. So I think for future dialogue here. So that's it. Any other questions from council upon further? Yeah, Councillor.
I don't have a question, but I think we're having a second public meeting. I think this traffic issue should be front and center for all the residents to understand. We should have a traffic consultant on that meeting.
Well said. We'll wrap things up. The planning consultant on behalf of the applicant, is there any last comments you would like to share? I certainly appreciate your candidness tonight, but certainly if you have anything to share before we wrap things up, the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. I think that this meeting has been really helpful in us understanding the community's concerns and feedback. Obviously, being the people who live in this community is really, you see it from a different perspective and the most important perspective. So this has been really helpful, and I think we're hearing traffic is really the main concern. So our traffic consultant is aware of some of the comments we've received today, and whether we have them attend a second public meeting or have them provide an updated study for review, we will be addressing these comments in one way or the other.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your candidness. And before we wrap up, to those individuals in our gallery and online tonight, thank you for taking time out of your schedule for an hour and a half tonight. I thought all of the comments that you provided were thoughtful, professional, fully grasped that this impacts your livelihood. This is the community you live in. So I sincerely appreciate you taking the time tonight and sharing those, and certainly, on behalf of council and the township, it's duly noted, so thank you. With that, I will declare this public meeting closed. Council will take no action on the proposal tonight. Staff will be reporting at a later date with a recommendation for council's consideration. If you wish to receive further notification of this proposal, please email or call planning@blissledge.ca or by phone at 519-763-1226 extension 4, or contact township staff during regular business hours. Only those persons who leave their names will be provided further notification. If you wish to speak to the proposal when it is brought before council in the future or at a subsequent public meeting, you must register as a delegation with the municipal clerk prior to the meeting. Thank you.
So do we have to register again?